Welcome to day 2 of Doctor Who week on this channel. This is going to be a run-up to the new series of Doctor Who, Series 11, starting on Sunday. This is day 2. First half of the week, I'm looking back at previous stuff, mostly Stephen Moffat era stuff. The second half of the week, we're going to look forward to Series 11 in these videos. Yesterday, I looked at Stephen Moffat's very first ever Doctor Who story back in 1999. You can catch that there. That's Curse of the Fatal Death. It was a... I almost said Children in Need, but comic relief special where it was a kind of a comedy spoof thing, but there were a lot of elements in it that kind of, I think, bled through to his era, and if you want to find out more, click up there. Today, we're going to stick with Moffat and rank all of the episodes that he has written. First, what counts? It has to be episodes of the main TV series, so no charity specials, no minisodes, nothing like that. It's only the main episodes of the main series. Also, two-parters count as one story, and and the other thing is that I'm not counting co-written stories. So if on the billing it says Stephen Moffat, written by Stephen Moffat or somebody and Stephen Moffat, that doesn't count. And the reason for that is that when you're a showrunner of a TV show, what sometimes happens is that a writer might turn in a script and you might have to make quite significant revisions to it. And if you make enough revisions to it, your name gets added as a co-writer. But it did start out as an original story by that one person. So it's very hard to know which of those is that and which of those were co-written from the start as a collaborative process from the very beginning. And so for that reason, I'm discounting all co-written episodes. So only episodes where Stephen Moffat has his name and his name only in the written by section. So with all that said, we've got 33 stories to get through, so let's just get to it. You can let me know in the comments below. Obviously, this is just my opinion, and my opinion anyway might change next week. I don't know, some of these might move around next time if I ever do this list again. What are your opinions? I don't expect you to list all 33 if you don't want to. You're more than welcome to, but you don't have to. Just put your top 5 and your bottom 5 or something like that. In the comments below if you feel like it. Let's get on with it. Number 33 is right at the bottom of this list. Let's Kill Hitler. I think this will be on the bottom of many people's list because from what I can gather, it's a fairly universally despised episode. And it's easy to see why. After the phenomenal episode of A Good Man and Goes to War, which was the previous episode, we had a long break, mid-season break, and then we had this. And it's just bad. It's just not good. It's such a disappointment after that last episode. The whole Hitler angle is completely pointless and is just there for showmanship, is that the right word? To put it in the title and I hope that will draw people in. And it's just a silly sideshow that doesn't really add anything to the plot at all. The whole Mel's River thing, I mean, Mel's, why have we never heard of Mel's before? She's apparently one of Rory and Amy's best friends that is so important to their life, and yet we haven't heard of her before this episode. Strange that. Doesn't really make any sense. And then there's the fact that the quickness that River / Mel's goes from being a programmed killer of the Doctor, someone who is out to kill the Doctor, to suddenly switching and being his saviour. Happens so quickly, seems unrealistic. I didn't like it. In order to be fair, there were some good one-liners and there were some interesting things they added to the mythology of the show, but overall, it doesn't make up for the bad stuff. Number 31, we've got the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. There's a lot I don't like about this episode. It feels rushed. It's all rather twee. I mean, taking a well-known story as a basis for the plot of a Christmas special is a well-known Moffat Christmas thing, but whereas I think he did it wonderfully with A Christmas Carol, it did not work here. Its one redeeming moment was near the end where Madge is piloting through the time vortex and she sees her husband's plane. She knows he's going to his death. The children are there. They know, they can see he's going to his death. It's very, that's very touching and emotional, and that was the one good thing about this episode. I was bored through most of the episode, but I was gripped for that one scene at the end. It's that kind of stopped That one scene stopped this slipping to below Let's Kill Hitler, basically. And number 30, I'm putting The Time of the Doctor. It just doesn't feel like a complete story for me. It's bitty, it's kind of all over the place. It just doesn't feel like a complete coherent story. It feels like lots of little tiny stories, and I don't know, it just wasn't very engaging for me. I thought the origin of the silence was interesting, but glossed over way too much, given how much they had been important to the series up to this point, and to Matt Smith's era up to this point. And yeah, I wasn't that fussed by it. Particularly, I thought it was a bit of a letdown for an end to his era, to Matt Smith's era. The only one redeeming feature, I think, of this was the end speech. I thought that was brilliantly done and brilliantly performed by Matt Smith. It was just, I don't know, there was just no coherency to the episode, and that's why I ranked it so low. Number 29, we got Dark Water / Death in Heaven. I liked the start of this episode. I thought Danny's death was actually quite good and well done. I think it was quite poignant because it was so ordinary, and I actually even liked the whole Clara betrayal bits where she stole all the keys, or she thought she was stealing all the keys to the TARDIS to try and force the Doctor to go back and save Danny. I liked that. Tragedy can force humans or push humans to do extreme things, and yeah, I know a lot of people thought that made her a horrible companion, but I thought it made her a brilliant character. I thought it really added to her character. You don't have to like the characters to think they're good characters. You don't have to agree with their actions to think they're good characters. You can think someone was terribly wrong for doing something and yet still think it makes an interesting character, and that's what I think that was. But the episode went downhill, I think. The first episode was okay. I didn't like the whole cremation, people feeling the pain of the cremation up in the sphere thing. That just struck me as, for a family show, quite dark, very dark. And I don't mind Doctor Who getting dark, but that was a bit too dark. I mean, little kids might be sitting at home, their granny might have just died, and thinking, who went off to be cremated, and thinking, oh my god, did granny feel that pain? And it seemed a bit too much for me. That seemed more Black Mirror than Doctor Who, and I love Black Mirror, and I would have loved to have seen that plot in a Black Mirror episode. Not quite sure it works in Doctor Who as well. The second part I thought went massively downhill. The Clara is the Doctor fake out I didn't like. The whole President of Earth thing, the Cyberbrig thing, the Cybermen in general, I thought were a bit rubbish in this episode. So the second part is much lower down than the first part if I was ranking these separately. But they're ranked together, so they're going here. Oh no, I've got the numbering wrong. I missed out a number. So add 1 to every number I've just said. And this is 29. Actual 29 is Hellbent. The first third of this episode I actually really liked. I liked that we went back to Gallifrey. I loved the standoff with Rassilon. I thought the whole stuff in the barn was quite good. All of it up until where they brought Clara back. Clara back. Until they brought Clara back, it was going really well, and then it went downhill from there. Now, I don't know. I get that Stephen Moffat thinks of Doctor Who as a fairy tale, and therefore nobody should die permanently, and you can see that. He does it loads of times. He does the fake out dying loads of times, and he did it again in season 10. But they just should have left her dead. She had such a good ending. And then they brought her back, and I could have forgiven it. If they'd actually ended with the realisation that she had to go back and actually put her back to her death then. But no, she had to go flying off with a shielder, with me, and flying around in their own TARDIS at the end, saying that one day they'll go back there, but no, didn't like it. Now, at number 28, I've got an unexpected one for myself. The Girl in the Fireplace. This is a lot lower than I expected it to be. I have memories of loving this episode, and, my whole general memories of the Russell T Davies era is that Stephen Moffat's episodes were the best ones in each season. And yet, when I came to rewatch it, I don't know, it was just okay. In fact, in some parts, it's actually quite hammy, and some of the dialogue is very cheesy, which I'm not a fan of. What saves it is the end. Again, like, actually quite a lot. I think this is the thing with Moffat. Sometimes he packs an emotional punch right when you're not expecting it, and that kind of saves it slightly. And this does that. That whole Doctor just missing out on her, going back to going back to the future, and then coming back for her, and then all that time has passed and she's died, and that was quite heartbreaking. And generally, even the second time watching it fairly recently was that was quite hard hitting. I liked that, but the rest of the episode just doesn't match it in tone, in anything really, in quality, and I was quite surprised by this one that it's so low. But that's why I rewatched them, because that's why I didn't just go from my memory of the episodes. Had to rewatch them for this list, and this is why. Next up is Asylum of the Daleks. Next is the Pandorica Opens / The Big Bang. I don't know, it lacks the emotional punch that some of the season finales have. I did like the timey-wimey bits though, and Matt Smith is always fun. At number 25, The Bells of St. John. And number 24, The Girl Who Lived. Ashilda is basically the actress's character from Game of Thrones in this episode. She develops later on, but in this episode, she's so much like Arya. Arya? That's a character in Game of Thrones, isn't it? That it's distracting. Now, 23 is Extremis. Now, yes, this was kind of part of a three-parter, but I'm including it by itself because it was the only one written solely by Stephen Moffat. If I had to rank all of them in order, I would put this one in the middle. Part 2 I thought was really good. Part 3 ruined the whole trilogy for me. I thought Part 3 was rubbish, Part 2 was really good, and this part is okay, which is why it's here on this list, because I'm assessing this by itself. I quite like the simulation twist, and I like Nardole being all kick-ass with Bill. That was a nice moment. Next is The Beast Below. I loved the moral dilemma at the end of this episode. Kill all the humans or let them torture the whale. Number 21, Time of Angels / Flesh and Stone. This gets a lot of criticism for being the sort of start of the descent of the quality of the angels, but I don't think so. Overall, it's a good episode. The angels are still creepy. I loved the idea of the weekend angels not looking like angels anymore. Decayed, crumbling. However, I do think they added a little bit too much lore of the angels in one story. I think they could have maybe saved some of that till later. Number 20, I've got The Pilot. I think this was a good attempt at changing and jumping on point for new viewers. Although why you do that in your last season as showrunner, I don't really know, but it told the story from a new companion's perspective, which is something we hadn't really seen since Rose, so that helped as a jumping on point, I think. There were some clunky moments. I thought the way they introduced her sexuality was a bit strange. I mean, they just threw in this random Hearst telling this random story about this girl she fancied with chips, and the whole serving her chips thing and making her fat thing. It was a random story out of nowhere. I mean, there were so many other ways they could have introduced her sexuality. That story served literally no purpose other than to tell the audience that she is gay, and it just jarred a bit I mean, even the Doctor says, well, what does that got to do with what we're talking about? Which I think is, why did you come to my lectures? And it doesn't. So I don't get why they did it that way. They could have done it 100 other ways in that episode, and it just seemed very clunky. Next up is Angels Take Manhattan, another good Angels story. What I didn't like about the episode was the big, giant, moving Statue of Liberty. In fact, it's probably even my favourite character ending for a companion, probably throughout the whole of Who. In my number 18 slot, I put Deep Breath. Shocking CGI in this episode. Shockingly bad CGI in this episode. But there were lots of good things about this episode that raise it up as well. 17 starts a run of Christmas specials in this list. We got the return of Dr. Mysterio. Doctor Who takes on the superhero genre, and I'm a fan of the superhero genre. I like the way they pastiched some of it, and sort of took the mick out of some of it. And it's an absurd idea. I think they pulled it off quite well. And actually, I quite like Nardole in this, which I didn't like him in The Husbands of River Song. And talking of The Husbands of River Song, here we go. It's next on the list. The absolute selling point on this is the interaction between River Song and the 12th Doctor, which is absolutely brilliant, especially when she doesn't have a clue who he is. And it's just so fun. It's kind of the point of the whole episode, and I love it for that. They have such great chemistry. The only thing I didn't like about this episode, really, was Nardole, who I came to love later, but in this episode I find him really annoying. And number 15, got Last Christmas. Now this is a Black Mirror style episode that works with Doctor Who. I think it just borders on the right side of darkness, I think, to work. I loved the dreams within dream element. I know it's very Inception, but it works, and it keeps you guessing what's real. Are we seeing the real version of reality now or not? It mixed fun and horror well in the same episode. Number 14, we got the Snowman. I told you there would be a run of Christmas specials now, didn't I? This was a great reintroduction to Clara after her Asylum of the Daleks episode. I kind of wish that we'd had this version of Clara throughout the whole run, but unfortunately we didn't. Oh, one of my lights is just gone. Is this side of my face suddenly darker? 13, I put the Doctor's Apprentice / The Witcher's Familiar. The stuff between the Doctor and Davros is brilliant, possibly the best stuff between the Doctor and Davros we've ever seen, certainly since Genesis. It's the best since Genesis, absolutely. It may even beat Genesis. I don't know. That's a bit controversial, I guess, but it's absolutely phenomenal. The rest of the stuff is not so great. The episode's let down massively by the Viking stuff at the beginning, which was, tank, electric guitar. This was the start of Silly Doctor, which I did not like, but the Dr. Davros stuff more than makes up for it. Number 12, The Empty Child / The Doctor Dancers. Brilliant. It was the best episode, I think, in season 1 of Doctor Who, series 1 of Doctor Who. Rewatching it, there was one line which I hadn't noticed the first time around, and really struck me this time. Asked why he was back in London. The Doctor asked one of the little boys why he was back in London and not being evacuated. And all the boy says is, there was a man there. And I kind of hadn't realised the implications of that the first time around, or even the second time around, or any other time I'd watched it until I watched it for this list. And that's just so chilling, the sort of possible implications of that one line. Number 11, we have my favourite Christmas special, A Christmas Carol. A great twist on a classic tale. It was heartfelt and warm. It was different from anything we'd had before. Slower paced, but worked really well and kept me gripped, and had some absolutely fantastic soundtrack to it as well, because it had Catherine Jenkins in it singing. So yeah, my favourite Christmas special. Number 10, we got The 11th Hour, a brilliant soft reboot to the programme, a brilliant introduction for the 11th Doctor. We get great introductions to Amy, we get great introductions to the plot arcs, which not only run for a season like they did in the Russell T Davies era, but we got introductions to things that didn't play out for 3 or even more years in this one episode. Number 9, Twice Upon a Time. What can I say? I love a multi-Doctor story. Like, it's not perfect. While I thought David Bradley did an amazing job at portraying the First Doctor, I did think the writing of the First Doctor was a little bit weak, especially all the sexism stuff, because although the Doctor, over his 3-year run of the classic era, had the occasional line where he said something that we would now consider a bit iffy, that was like spread out quite a lot over those 3 years. Here, he's rattling them off left, right and centre, and he just wasn't like that. He may have said the occasional questionable thing once in a while, but he certainly didn't say like 5 in a row. And I get the joke that Moffat was going for. I don't think it worked. But there were some other things that I think people have issue with this episode that actually I really liked. I've seen some people have issue with the fact that there wasn't really a bad guy. That they weren't doing anything evil, the people that he came up against. But I really liked that. I thought that was unique and different. I don't think we need there to be a bad guy every time. Sometimes it's interesting to see how the Doctor will react to other types of situations, to being thrown into slightly more morally ambiguous situations. Number 8, Silence in the Library / Forest of the Dead. River Song's debut episode. I love River Song. I love the complicated, timey-wimey nature of her plot, her timeline, her interactions with the Doctor. And again, this is one of those things that some people really don't like. I have no problem with River Song in any times. I don't think she was overused. I think she's been used perfectly the right amount. And I didn't mind that she kept on having seemingly endings and bringing them back. None of them seemed to ruin the previous ending for me. But this isn't the ending, this is the very start. And I think most people will admit that at the beginning, even the people that don't like her by the end kind of didn't mind her at the beginning. Number 6, I put Blink, which is one of the creepiest Doctor Who episodes and is the angels at their best. Actually villainous, actually scary. The tension's kept up throughout the whole episode. It does not dip once, and the time travel elements of cause and effect are explored in a really interesting and well done way. Top 5 time now, we got Listen. Love the dark, haunting atmosphere, the feeling of suspense generated by a question we all ask: what's under the bed? And I love that we get to see a little snippet, just a tiny little snippet of the Doctor's backstory of his childhood. Back when he was on Gallifrey, when Clara goes back into his timeline and is the thing under his bed. I love getting those little snippets, little drip feeds of information about the Doctor's past. I don't want a whole big massive episode where we find out tons and tons of stuff, but little drip feeds, that's how it's been through most of the series. We get tiny bits of information about his history, and I think that's the way it should be done, and it was done brilliantly here. At number 4, World Enough and Time / The Doctor Falls. If I hadn't decided to rank the two parters as one story, the first part of this would probably be higher. I'm not sure how much higher, but it would probably be higher, and the second part would be lower. I think the first part of this is actually a masterpiece. It is amazingly well shot. I love the narrative device of the ship that is so long that one part of it that's closer to a black hole is moving at one time, and the other point is moving faster or slower, or whichever way round it is, I thought that was such a good plot device. And then you've got the really emotional story of Bill and her time away from the Doctor and waiting for him, and gradually, and then her conversion into a Cyberman, and it's just so good. I love this episode. It's a brilliant episode. The second part, The Doctor Falls, has good bits. It's not a bad story by any means, but it is nowhere near the greatness of the first part. In the second part, I would say the best bit was the Doctor's speech. The I do what I do because it's right, to be kind, that speech. That was the highlight of the second episode. The downfall of the second episode was mostly with the Master, I think, and the Missy. I think they were a bit wasted. There is some good stuff between them, mostly in the first scene and in the end scene, but there's a whole big chunk in the middle where I thought they were quite wasted, and they were just kind of sitting on walls, not doing much. And after the build-up of knowing that Johnson was going to be back in this as the Master, kind of felt a little bit disappointing. I get that there's time constraints and they had a lot to fit in. It just would have been nice to see a bit more of them. Number 3, 50th Anniversary Special, Day of the Doctor. I was on the edge of my cinema seat watching this. I literally had a grin on my face so big throughout the whole viewing of it. As I said before, I love a multi-Doctor story, and this is the best multi-Doctor story we have ever had. No, it didn't have all the Doctors. Well, it kind of did, but not properly. But, you know, there's a lot of Doctors now, and that would have been difficult. In terms of narrative, in terms of the way that it was acted, the way this actually having a decent, coherent story, it is the best multi-Doctor story we've had. I loved the cinematic feel to the opening. I loved the sort of swell of emotion and pride even of the Doctor when he saves Gallifrey. That music with all the Doctors coming in and reporting in to the War Council of Gallifrey. It's so good. What else? How they solved the Zygon situation in the Black Archives was also really good, although it, surpassed by the later Zygon inversion or inversion speech that he does in the same archives, the Capaldi does in the same archive later on. But this scene is still up there with that one, just slightly below it. This episode just felt like everything since 2005 had been leading up to this. The capping off the Time War, it felt like a real big culmination of everything that had been coming for the last 8 years, and wow, it was pretty damn good and exciting to be watching it in the cinema. And number 2, now this top 3 is very fluid and may well change, because these top 3 episodes are all so absolutely brilliant that I struggled which one I would put where, but I've had to come up with something, and I'm sticking with it for now until I change my mind. But for now, number 2, Heaven Sent. The fact that this episode is just the Doctor by himself, Peter Capaldi, pulling off a whole episode where it is just him and he's the only one speaking, and he does it amazingly well, and the fact that he can pull that off and that Stephen Moffat can write an episode that pulls that off is why this episode is so high up on this list. The writing, the acting, the editing, everything about this episode, the music, oh my god, the music is phenomenal. That swelling score that underpins him as he realises what's going on, as he punches the diamond again and again and finally breaks free into Gallifrey. It is, everything about this episode is so brilliantly well done. And then we get the cliffhanger. Gallifrey is back, and whatever you think of what happened in the next episode, you can't deny that this episode was phenomenal, and even that return to Gallifrey at the end, what an epic cliffhanger. Oh, so good. But not as good as my number 1 choice for now, which is A Good Man Goes to War. This episode has action, it has wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, which I love. It has callbacks to previous storylines and ongoing story arcs, and key revelations about ongoing story arcs, callbacks to past episodes and characters, and it has real heart as well. It is one of the few episodes of Doctor Who that actually made me cry. I actually shed actual tears when Amy was holding the baby Melody, and it dissolved in her hands and turned out to be a Ganger duplicate. Actually cried at that point. And I think that scene is a big contribution into why this episode is so high up on this, and the fact that it has everything else. A Good Man Goes to War, my favourite Stephen Moffat written episode. So that's my list. What is yours? You don't have to put the whole list, just maybe put your top 5 and your bottom 5 or something like that in your, or maybe just your top 1 and your bottom 1 in the comments below if you want to. Whatever you feel like. Put the whole 30 odd in there if you can be bothered. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and all that jazz for more videos, especially this week leading up to Series 11, which starts on Sunday, and I will have more videos tomorrow. I plan to do a video about the music of Murray Gold, as he has also departed us. Again, another looking back video before we move on to looking forward in the rest of the week. Murray Gold's music, what are my favourite tracks? That coming tomorrow. In the meantime, why don't you check out yesterday's video talking about Curse of the Fatal Death and how it kind of influenced, predicted, something like that. I can't think of the right word now. The Moffat era. And here's another video YouTube thinks you might like. Thanks a lot. Bye.